We're going to continue graphing systems. Once again, what I like to do is I like to make my x-axis and y-axis. I also like to start off with my linear equation first. In this case, y equals -1. On the y-axis, I'm going to go to -1, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my exponential. With my exponential, first thing that I always do is look for my horizontal asymptote. In this case, whatever we're adding or subtracting is the horizontal asymptote. So in this case, it's -2. So at -2, I draw a horizontal line. I put dashes to let me know that the line does not cross that. I make my XY chart next, and I use the numbers -1, 0. When I plug in the -1, it flips it, so that becomes 1/4. And I have 1/4 minus 2, which is -1 and 3/4. Then I'm going to plug in my 0. When I plug in my 0, anything to the 0 is 1. 1 minus 2 is -1. Then I'm going to plug in my 1. Whenever I plug in a 1, it stays the same. So 4 minus 2 is 2. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot my points. So I have -1, -1 and 3/4. I have 0, -1. And I have 1 and 2. That right there is my exponential. Remember, my answer is where they cross. So in this case, the answer is 0. Now, looking at the next one. Once again, what I want to do is start off with my linear equation. So notice that it's not y equals, it's x equals. And whenever it's x equals, it's a vertical line. So where's the vertical line? The vertical line is at 2. So on my x-axis, I go to +2. And I draw my vertical line. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my exponential. Notice that I'm not adding or subtracting anything. That means my horizontal asymptote is at 0. So I draw my dashed line at 0. I'm going to make my XY chart. I'm going to pick my same points, -1, 0, and 1. Remember, when I plug in a -1, it flips the number. So instead of a 2, it becomes a 1/2. Anything to the 0 is 1. And when we plug in a 1, it stays the same. So I have -1.5, 0, 1. I have 1, 2. Now there's a problem. It doesn't cross, but it looks like it's going to cross. So I'm going to keep on going. If I plug in a 2, 2 squared is a 4. So at 2, 4 is my next point. So sometimes you have to go a little bit further than the -1, 0, and 1. Remember, that's not our answer. Our answer is where it crosses. So it crosses at 2, 4. Now, looking at our last system. Once again, I start with my linear equation. When I'm looking at my linear equation, the first thing that I always want to do is see where does it cross the y-axis. So in this case, we notice that it crosses the y-axis at 2. So I plot a point at 2. My slope is -1. I go down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1 again to make sure my line is straight. Now, if I look at my exponential, what I notice is that I'm not adding or subtracting anything. That tells me that I have a horizontal asymptote at 0. And I'm going to use my same table values. I'm going to use my -1, 0, and 1. When I plug in a -1, it flips it to 2. 2 times 2 gives me 4. Anything to the 0 is 1, times 2 is 2. When I plug in a 1, it stays the same. 2 times a half gives me 1. -1 is 4. 0, 2. 1, 1. And this one is slightly different than the other ones. If you're looking closely, what you notice is that it doesn't just cross once, it crosses twice. So we actually have two answers in this case. We have 0, 2, and we have 1, 1.